Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel, and today we will be ranking the albums of Rush. So before I get started, let me just say this. Recently I have had on some of my older videos some people who have made comments correcting something that I've said about the band. That's all totally cool, guys. I mean, when I'm doing these rankings, I'm doing research, but it's very light research because I'm not really doing an album review or a band sort of retrospective. I'm just kind of giving my opinion of what my favorite albums are from this band. So a lot of times I will mess up and say, oh, well, this person was in the band, or this person, it's not that I've done extensive research. There's some bands I know better than others, obviously, but it's all about the music. But yeah, absolutely feel free to make those corrections at any time. I'm all about getting more information. But I will say at the same time, two things that that I don't too much care for is, if you do make a correction, do it with class. I mean, I really cannot tolerate sarcastic remarks about things like that. But most of you guys are good. I mean, pretty much everyone who has made a correction has been pretty classy about it. So I do appreciate that. And like I said, these are not universal rankings. These are my opinion. You got your own opinion. Make comments in the comment section. Tell me what your favorites are. Most of my people who listen to my channel are very cool. I mean, it's just a dialogue usually. So I do appreciate you guys. And let's go ahead and get started with Rush. Now I want to start by saying Rush was a band that it took me a little while to warm up to. I was not a big fan in the beginning, and it was mostly because of Geddy Lee's voice. Later I did get used to it. And now it's even almost sort of endearing. So we're going to go ahead and get started with it. And my least favorite album from the band Rush is called Roll the Bones. I'm just not a big fan of this album. At times it sounds too weak for me. It sounds like a sort of a weak version of Duran Duran, sometimes mixed with like almost this contemporary Christian rock sound. And some of the later Rush albums had that feel to it. It's almost like I was listening to Christian contemporary radio or something, just not the lyrics. I just don't like that kind of sound for Rush. Too light, too unrush to me. But Roll the Bones is just not, it's not something I really listen to at all. I mean, there's a few songs on the album that I enjoyed. I think Ghost of a Chance is all right, But yeah, moving on is going to be Counterparts. And this ranks a little higher in some of the people's rankings that I've seen. But to me, yeah, Rush trying to go kind of alternative rock, but they don't really lose their prog roots here. I mean, the album's not awful or anything like that. It's not something that I go to and listen to. Animate is okay. Double Agent's a pretty cool song on this one, but it's just not for me. Next is going to be Hold Your Fire. Again, a weaker album in my opinion. It's not terrible. There's not really a Rush album that's terrible. So let's just get that out of the way. But at times it sounds too saccharine. It sounds too sugary. A lot of times Rush kind of sounded too upbeat to me, too, I don't know, major chord, Geddy Lee trying to sound uplifting and stuff, and it was just like sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Mostly didn't on this album. I do enjoy some of the tracks. I like Open Secrets, Prime Mover are okay. Next is going to be Presto. Still not up to par as far as Rush is concerned to me. This one's a tad bit better maybe than Hold Your Fire. At times, the music sounds a little bit like a '80s King Crimson, a bit, and sometimes it don't sound anything like it. It's a very passionate album, but I just, I mean, Chain Lightning, Scars, they're pretty good songs. Next is going to be Snakes and Ladders. This one's a little better than the alt-rock stuff that they released in the 90s. It still lacks a little something. I don't know what. It's tense. It's anxious a bit. Kind of nerve-wracking to me sometimes. But I do like Main Monkey Business. I do like Malignant Narcissism as songs on this one. Moving on is going to be Vapor Trails. The cover of this album is so 90s. I mean, it is. It looks like one of those grunge alternative band, like a Soundgarden or Stone Temple Pilots type of cover art. I don't know. But yeah, it's a little bit better than Snakes and Ladders. But I mean, it's a solid rock album. Vapor Trails is pretty good. I mean, I actually do sit down and listen to this one from time to time. One Little Victory, Ghost Rider, Vapor Trail, great songs. Moving on is going to be Test for Echo. It's another 90s attempt at alt-rock. It works better than Counterparts for me, but it's still not in my top Rush listens. Test for Echo is a great song. I like that one. Time and Motion's pretty killer. But Dog Years, I mean, come on, guys. There's a lyric. I mean, in a dog's life, a year is really more like 7, and something like, and too soon, a canine will be chasing cars in doggy heaven. Okay. I mean, maybe that just goes over my head a little bit, but that's terrible. But the album itself is okay. Next is going to be Signals. Not as heavy as the earlier albums, but still got some prog elements in it. This one has way more of an 80s vibe to it than the earlier 80s albums. It's a little bit lighter than those albums in sound. It's still very dramatic, still very ambitious. A lot of the songs, Getty sounds more monotone on this. It's almost like he's singing in the same key on most of the songs. Chemistry's great. I do enjoy The Weapon. It almost sounds like Alan Parsons' project in a way. Countdown. A lot of these 80s albums almost have a mixture of like Ecstasy and or XTC, Yes, little 80s Yes, little sometimes a little Duran Duran, sometimes a little Police. And we'll be getting to that shortly. But yeah, that was Signals. Next is going to be Fly By Night. I like the album. It's just it's just sort of, to me, it's almost like a slight clone of the debut album, but a little bit more classic Rush sounding than the debut album. A lot of people rank this one high, and it is a great album. It's got a little bit more prog on it, but it's just, to me, it's just not as fun as the first album. Obviously, I'm going to rank the first album higher, so I kind of blew that, didn't I? Best I Can sounds a bit like Kiss at times. By and the Snow Dog, I really like that one. Fly By Night, of course. Making Memories. Making Memories at times sounds like the Doobie Brothers. It's just crazy. But it's a great, great song. Great album, Fly By Night. Next is going to be Power Windows. Complete 80s Rush, a bit heavier than Grace Under Pressure, but the songs are not as strong to me as Grace Under Pressure. Again, I just gave you another clue that I'm going to rank this Grace Under Pressure higher, so yeah, stay tuned. I still love it. Grand Designs, love that song. Marathon, Emotion Detector, Mystic Rhythm sounds a bit like King Crimson, so yeah, Power Windows, great album. I love the cover of that album as well. Moving on is going to be Clockwork Angels. Surprisingly excellent, heavy prog album. The final album from Rush, the atmosphere, the darkness, the production are all top notch. Rush got their groove back with this one, big time. It's kind of classified as neo-prog, but this can compete with any new prog band that came out at the time or released any albums at the time. I enjoy this whole album. The songs are strong, except for maybe a couple. There's no real standouts to me because they're all good. There's a couple of weaker songs that I skipped, but is excellent from start to finish to end this band's outstanding career. Next is going to be Permanent Waves. This again is 80s Rush synthesizers, but they're not really cheesy as it would sound most 70s bands that came in the 80s and changed their sound. This one has some excellent material. You got Jacob's Ladder, you got different strings, and those are probably my favorite tracks, but really solid album, Permanent Waves. Moving on is going to be 2012. This is probably the first classic sounding Rush album. Moves away from that Zeppelin kind of AC/DC sound of the earlier two albums. The concepts, the prog complexity here. You got the epic track 2112. It's more serious and provocative than the earlier two albums. I enjoyed the epic 2112. I enjoy the Twilight Zone. Kind of a very bizarre song on this. Something for Nothing's a good song as well. Next is going to be a little bit of a surprise, guys. It's Grace Under Pressure. I love this album. And it's growing on me even more now. This is their Cold War album. And if you've listened to my channel and you know anything about me, I am obsessed with the Cold War. I love reading about the Cold War, watching Cold War stuff, documentaries, movies, anything about the Cold War I can get my hands on, songs about the Cold War. And this album is a Cold War album by Rush, and I really enjoy it. It does sound a lot like the Police at times, and I love the Police. They're one of my favorite bands. It also has, again, the XTC, a little bit of that, a little bit of 80s, yes. It's got all that in there. It's complex. It's a little bit lighter than what, the earlier Rush stuff, but it's fantastic. You got Distant Early Warning. You got Enemy Within. You got Body Electric. You've got Between the Wheels. Such fantastic material, lyrically and musically, for the guys on Grace Under Pressure. Next is going to be Caress of Steel. This one's similar to Bon Scott AC/DC stuff at times. I mean, it's way more complex than AC/DC, but it's where you get that kind of first taste of the classic Geddy voice, that high nasally sound that's not as aggressive as the first albums. I do like Lakeside Park, okay, and the two epics, Necromancer and Fountains of Lamnet. Bastille Day is a great song as well off this one. Very solid, underrated album. Moving on is Moving Pictures. This is the big 80s Rush album. Tom Sawyer, the smash hit, I guess you could say, the big radio song, Tom Sawyer, is on this album. I love that song. I know it's played into the ground, but I still love it. This one's very futuristic sounding. It's just, I don't know. It's probably the most prog album of the 80s by anyone. I love YYZ. I love Tom Sawyer. I love Limelight, another radio hit. I love Witch Hunt. That's a great song on this one. Just a very good album, Moving Pictures. It's highly rated and should be. Next might be a bit of a surprise, but this is one of my favorite albums by Rush, and it is Rush, the debut album, hard rock, similar to Bon Scott, AC/DC / Led Zeppelin. Sounds a lot like Led Zeppelin in some cases. The guys are loose, confident. It's got this freewheeling energy. It's nothing like a lot of the Rush stuff you'd hear. It's aggressive, even swaggering a bit. It is Zeppelin. It's like a Zeppelin, a little bit of Bon Scott, AC/DC. I love that the guys could do this. Find My Way, Need Some Love, In the Mood is this 70s good time rock type sound, before and after, and then these great Working Man at the end of it. I love that song. This whole album is just fantastic from start to finish. I can just turn it on and, do anything, do whatever I've got to do around the house or outside with my headphones on or whatever. Rush, the debut album, just fantastic album. I love this album. Okay, moving on to the top 2. And number 2 is the epic progressive rock essential album. I love every song off this album. But my favorite song is off this album. But my favorite song of all Rush songs is off this album. It is Farewell to Kings. And my favorite Rush song off this album is Xanadu. Absolute love that song. I love all the songs off this album, but Xanadu to me is the epic Rush quintessential song of all time. My favorite Rush song. If I could never listen to any other Rush song again, I would choose Xanadu to listen to and throw all the rest in the garbage. Not really. I mean, I wouldn't throw any Rush in the garbage, but you know what I'm saying. Xanadu is it to me. But Farewell to Kings is such a progressive masterpiece. It was very hard for me to rank these next, this album and then the next album, the number 1 album. I would go back and forth as to which one I wanted to be number 1, but I finally just decided that Farewell to Kings had to be number 2, even though it has my favorite song on it, because my number 1 album is Hemispheres. This one to me is a bit stronger than Farewell to Kings. Even though Xanadu is on Farewell to Kings, every song off Hemispheres is a bit stronger than Farewell to Kings to me. This is the magnum opus of Rush to me. Every song is a standout. I'm not going to name them. I mean, they're all standouts. It's a near perfect album to me. If Hemispheres had Xanadu on it, it may be in my top 3 favorite albums of all time. I mean, it's a fantastic journey into progressive, heavy rock from the late 1970s. If you haven't heard this album, you need to listen to it today. Hemispheres, to me, the best Rush album, my favorite Rush album. And that's all I have today to say about Rush. So leave your comments, likes. You can share this video if you want. Subscribe to my channel. Tell other people about my channel. I love you guys. And I've had more subscribers. I've had more comments. I've had more likes recently. And I really, really deeply appreciate it. Next is going to be The Who. So stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, you guys take care.